That would force libraries to have policies to keep minors from accessing certain materials appears one step away from final passage in the state legislature. But as Sabrina Wilson reports, opponents, including some librarians, say it is not needed.
Libraries are known for being quiet, but at the state capitol, a bill already approved by the full state Senate has people letting their voices be heard.
I went from being a community leader to an outcast because I am a librarian. This has affected my child, my husband, and my 96-year-old grandmother. As a librarian, I know there already exist policies in our libraries to safeguard children.
As a parent, it's my responsibility to protect the innocence of my children. I do not want them exposed prematurely to sexually explicit pornographic material.
Senator Heather Cloud of Turkey Creek was joined by Attorney General Jeff Landry in presenting her bill to the House Education Committee. She says it's designed to keep children from accessing sexually explicit materials at libraries.
This bill does not require the moving or removal of any books from the library system. This only applies to the library cards and the parent being able to set parental controls on that library card. So basically, they can't check out the book.
However, under the bill, library users will be able to request that the library reconsider whether certain materials should be included in a library collection accessible to minors.
This would be a book-by-book approach as a patron challenges the book.
So was there any conversation with who really oversees the library?
We had a lot of communication.
But some opponents think the bill takes aim at materials that reference LGBTQ+.
I find that most of the books, if not the majority of them, were LGBTQ in area, right, in discussion and topic.
But opponents say the proposed new law is totally unnecessary and could hurt libraries financially.
Every library has a system for which community members can challenge, and we all have reconsideration policies. Libraries already use the three-pronged Miller test to keep obscene materials out of libraries. We have never had an issue with our libraries until they start being used for political gain.
The bill allows parishes to withhold funding from libraries that fail to adopt the required policies and prohibits the State Bond Commission from considering applications for new debt or the levy of taxes for such libraries. And the bill heads to the full state house where, if it passes without amendments, it will head to the governor's desk. Library books are a growing part of the national discourse. The American Library Association says there were over 1,200 demands to censor library books and resources in 2022. Again, Senator Cloud says her book doesn't require the removal of any library book.